Welcome to our video tutorial. This one's about how to make a raw CSS web page featuring an easy movie, hover menu, and clickable image. I think the best place to start when you're building a website is not on the computer. We don't need this thing yet. Before we get into all the confusing details of HTML and cascading style sheets and tags, we should start out with a whiteboard and a real simple overview of what the heck it is that we're trying to do. And it starts out with a box. Inside of the box for this website, I'm going to have a little movie up in the corner. I'm going to do movies in a different kind of way that'll work in even old browsers. It turns out that getting movies to play inside of Internet Explorer versions and Firefox and Chrome is tough. I'm going to show you a way to make a little movie work out nice and easy. At the other thing at the top, I want a navigation menu. The navigation menu is going to have little pull downs for various categories, and the categories are going to be product, articles, download, and the ever-present contact us. The main part of this particular website is going to be a picture. It's going to be a map that you can click on. And if you click on cities, you get a little story related to that little city or town. The map's going to look something like this. And these would be the cities. And the idea would be, here we've got a picture. You click on this, you get a story about this town. You click on that, you get a story about that town, etc. At the bottom, not too important, but we're going to have a footer. So now we've got the general idea about the website and what it's going to look like. Movie in the corner, navigation menu with drop-down stuff. The main part that you see is going to be a picture with little clickable stories on top of it and a footer with a copyright or something like that. Now that we've got that idea, now it's time to go look at a computer. And we're going to start out with HTML in the simplest kind of way and go from there. We're going to build our website, raw CSS, using Notepad, and tags are always kind of a ping-pong thing. HTML and HTML. A heading tag and an ending heading tag. Ping and pong. A body and the end of the body. This is super basic HTML, and it's the starting point for everything that we're going to do. When we get done, depending on what kind of a website you're setting up, you might want to call this thing index HTML, depending on your web server, or maybe home HTML. Kind of depends on whether you're using Apache or Internet Explorer or whatever. At this point, we have our really basic HTML done. And the next thing we're going to add is stuff that really doesn't show up. It's not visible. And it has to do with getting the syntax of the website just perfect. Now, if you think about the browsers, you've got Internet Explorer, you've got Firefox, you got the new guy on the block, Chrome. How can you make all of these things happy? I don't know. So what I do is I don't worry about any of these, and I run it through W3C org which is a validator. You start out with your basic HTML with our big 6 lines. We're copying in a doc type. It's long, it's complicated, it should fit on one line, but it doesn't. It says we're running XML1 transitional in English, and then we're talking about the namespace, and once again we're referring to the w3.org, which is the place where the validator is. It's the home of the rules for HTML, and I can't win with the browsers. I just try to make the validator happy and let the browsers figure it out themselves. Inside of that, we're going to have a content type, and that's a meta tag, which again, you would know doesn't actually show up in the browser. It's an information thing, and it says the content of this is going to be text, and it's going to be HTML, and the character set we're using is kind of like ASCII. It's UTF-8, and that's ASCII with a little bit more added in just for the heck of it, and we're not going to use that. We end off the meta tag. Our website is a little bit better than it was a minute ago. At this point, we've got the invisible structure of our website set up. It's about 10 lines of code. The ending is going to be about 100 lines of code. So let's roll along. The next thing let's do is let's talk about the content. And if you remember, I was going to have a movie in the upper corner of the website. Here's my movie. It's about 20 seconds of video, and I got it in MP4 format when I purchased it. And I want that to be something, a visually interesting element on my website. A little movie. Now, it turns out movies are hard to get to play in the web browsers. There's different formats. MPG, MPEG, or miles per gallon format. Really popular, works on a lot of platforms. Kind of a little old though. The newer one, MP4. MP4 looks like the way that the world is going, but it's not there yet. So a lot of the browsers and a lot of the computers don't have the codec required to do MP4 software quite yet. There's another real popular one, SWF, which is Flash. And Flash is really probably the dominant thing today, but I think it's on a decline. Turns out when I go and play my little movie, it would work just fine in Firefox. It would start up by itself. But in Internet Explorer and in Chrome, my movie just showed a box and a pop-up window saying, hey, there's a security concern with the movie content. Do you want to allow it to play? And then you got to click on stuff. Well, that's not the way I want my website to work. It looked great in Firefox, but it didn't work in the other two browsers. So what I did is I said, well, what does work for a little movie like this? Let's go old school. Forget about this stuff. I'm going to use a thing called an animated GIF. That would have worked the last century. It doesn't give you a lot of colors. It's not good for really long stuff. But I think this movie might play really nicely as an animated GIF. And the beauty of doing it that way is no security concerns, no complicated coding inside of my HTML. It plays on all the browsers. Now let's go and insert the code for the movie into the website and take a look at the result. Looking at the code inside of Notepad, we're going to add a title tag up in the heading area. We're starting to do a little bit of the content. The title actually doesn't appear in the main body of the thing. It's just kind of stuck up there at the top of the window in most browsers. Now we're going to go into the body, and we're going to add the very first piece of content, and it'll be the movie. But we're going to do it in an old style way, and the tag we're going to use is going to be an image source. So it's image source, and then the thing's called workingmovie.gif. Then after that, we'll type in the alternate name in case any blind people come to look at our website, and the title there will be like woman working on computer or something like that. After that, we'll end off the image tag. I want the little slash in there. That'll make the validator happy. We've started on the content for our website, and so far we've got the little movie in place. Next thing I want to do is the navigation menu. The navigation menu goes right across here, and we're going to have sections in it. And one's going to be products. The next section is going to be articles. The next section is going to be downloads. And the last section will be the ever-present contact us. From an HTML point of view, we're going to do this with a unordered list. So we're going to have a list with product, articles, downloads, and contact in it. And I want to make this thing to be a little bit fancier. I want it to have drop down. So when you point at it, you get kind of a drop down effect with items in it. When you point to the next thing, this drop down disappears, another one shows up with its little items. So what we're going to have is an unordered list with these, and inside of each of these we're going to have a unordered list of the items that you can choose from inside of the navigation menu. Now we're going to go over to the Notepad program. We're going to start typing it in. This is actually some of the most typing we're going to have to do for the home page on this website. Back at the Notepad terminal, we're going to come down into the body, and the next thing below our movie, or after our movie on the blackboard, will be these unordered lists of the things from our navigation menu. This is going to take me a little while to type. I like a little bit of indenting here. I don't go too nuts on it. And spelling is really picky. The top level item doesn't actually have anything clickable in it. That's what the little pound sign's all about. So that means when you click on the word products, you get the drop down, but the word products itself isn't clickable. So the very first thing in the drop-down menu for products is a link to a thing called Cloud Server HTML. And the description of that particular line is Cloud Server. So when you point at products, you're going to see this as one of the items. And this list is going to have 3 items in it. And that's the end of my very first drop-down list. Now we'll go down to the second thing over. Eventually this is going to turn out to be the part going across on our list. And I'm a fanatic about data backup, kind of a network administrator for a long time, and you realize the equipment doesn't count for much, but the data is a big deal, so we got to talk about that. And this is the end of my second thing. Once we got done typing our unordered list, you can see that the indents are the cross main categories on our navigation menu: products, articles, download, and contact. And then underneath it will be the items that are actual web pages you can click on. Let's go ahead and save this and see what our website looks like. Okay, at that point I'm pretty happy. I've got my movie in the upper corner. I've got my navigation menu kind of strung out underneath the movie. We haven't applied the cascading style sheets yet, which are going to do the physical arrangement. We're just worried about the content, and things are starting to fill out. The next part of content that we're going to go after is a map, and the map is going to be clickable, and we're going to use a old HTML idea, a clickable image map. It doesn't have to be a map. In our case it is. It could be a face, a picture of a face. Click on the nose, click on the eye, click on the mouth. Something would happen. It's a clickable image, but in this case it's going to be a whole map. So here's our little map of the area, Lake Erie, the area. We've got the little local lake, and what we're going to try to do is we're going to have a box around one of the little town names, and if you click on that box, something's going to happen. We're going to have a box, a rectangle, and if you click on that box for that little town, something's going to happen. It's going to tell you a story about this area. It's going to tell you a story about that area. And what you end up with is a bunch of boxes that are superimposed over the background picture. Now let's go back to the Notepad editor and we'll start typing in the HTML code for a clickable image map. Okay, now we're back into the editor looking at HTML. Here's the body. And we've got our little movie up at the top. Underneath that, we've got our navigation menu. We typed that in a couple minutes ago. There's the end of the body right there. We're going to put an image out there. And then after that, we're going to put a mapping structure. We'll start it with an image tag. The name of the picture. It's a JPEG file, fairly common thing to use. We'll throw an alt tag out there. And after that, we get into the interesting part. We'll say that this image is going to use a mapping structure. So we need a use map attribute. And the name of the attribute is going to be hashtag background. We'll close out that tag. Now we're ready to define the mapping structure. And the mapping structures have names. And the first one is map. The name of this one is background. The name we give it right here connects up with the name you specified in the use map, and that's like the way that the browser makes the magic happen. You could have more than one image and more than one mapping, and that's why they all have to have names. The clickable areas are all going to be rectangles. So shape is rectangle for all of them. They have a coordinates. And here's where you have to do some homework. Before you're ready to do typing, you need to bring your image into a painting program that'll tell you pixel coordinate numbers and make notes of where you want the clickable areas to be. In this case, if I've done my homework right, the answer should be 328, 233, 384, 253, and if I'm lucky, that'll make a box, a rectangular box. And when you click on it, it's going to do something. It's going to do it with an href to Mayville. HTML, another web page, will be the result, and I'll throw an alt tag on it. And that's the end of that area. That's the first of these clickable areas, little rectangles that are going to happen. I'm going to use the magic of editing and cut and paste to bring in the rest of it. Ta-da! At the end of this, we say that's the end of the mapping structure. And now we have a background image with a mapping structure which has a bunch of rectangles on top of it. Now let's check and see what happens in the browser. We had our movie, we had our nav menu, and our map that's clickable should show up down here someplace. Let's hit the refresh and hope for the best. Sure enough, there's our map, and watch what happens as I point to some of these areas. The areas are yellow because I did that in the painting program. You can see it changes shape as I go across, and that's pretty darn cool. So now we've got most of our content ready. We've got a movie, we've got a navigation menu, we've got an image with clickable areas on it. To finish off the content of our page, we're going to put a copyright message down into the footer area. Open up a little space, type in copyright, the little HTML symbol for the copy symbol, 2012 Giant Systems. Now let's switch over to the browser and see, yep, there's our little message down at the very bottom of our website. Now it's time to switch over from doing the content to the layout using cascading style sheets to change the look of our web page from kind of a vertically stacked structure. We've got the movie, we've got the navigation menu, we've got our clickable map, and down at the very bottom you can see the copyright message. We're finally to the core of this exercise and the reason for this video. We've got the content already defined in HTML, and the stuff we've defined will work back all the way to Netscape browsers from the previous century. Now we want to do the layout using CSS and a little bit of measuring before we're ready to start writing code. If you remember, we've got a movie in the corner, we've got a menu that drops down, and the heading area here, and it's going to be 90 pixels in size. The main area here is going to be that clickable map, the picture, and that's going to be 500 by 860. That's the size of my image, and notice that that image will fit comfortably inside of the screen resolution of most browsers today. Down at the bottom we got a footer. The footer's not that big a deal. We're only going to make it 20 pixels in height. So now let's go back to our editor and let's define the heading, the center area, and the footer in CSS. Back in our editor, it's time to add the style sheet. And we're going to add it right into the web page. The style is going to be of type text CSS, and then we'll end the style tag. We've got that pinging ponging thing going on. We might as well finish it right here and now. Now we'll go back up and we'll insert some style sheet stuff. The first section is kind of stuff for all browsers, just to try and make them act the same. The second section in our style sheet is going to be for the header, and we're going to begin and end the section for that. Then we've got another style sheet area for the middle part, and we're just going to set up the structure, beginning and end it, ping and pong. And the last part we've got is the footer, and we're going to begin and end that in the style sheet section. Now we're going to go down below into our content, into the body area, and we're going to add div IDs for the three sections. And the first section we've got is the header. And then we got to go down to find out where does our header end. It's quite a ways down here. It's down below our navigation menu. So we'll end the div right about there. Next section is going to be the div ID for the middle area. That's our clickable map, and we're just setting up the structure for that. And where does that go? Well, it ends way down here at the end of the map structure. The last piece, the little piece, is a div ID for the footer area. And we'll end that off. If we looked in a browser now, it wouldn't look at all different because we haven't changed anything yet. Now, into the generic thing that applies to all tags, we're going to do stuff to increase browser compatibility. Basically, we're going to set the margin to 0, the padding to 0, and the border width to 0. All the different browsers have their own great ideas on how they want to set these things, and I don't want to do any of them. In the header area, we're going to position the header as absolute, and it's going to start at the top, and the top is going to be right at 0 pixels. The width of it is going to be 860 pixels. All of our boxes, top, middle, and footer, are 860 wide. The height of the top section, the navigation menu, is going to be 90 pixels. We're going to define the font, and the family I'd like to use here is going to be from Comic Sans MS, and if I can't get Comic Sans MS, then I'll just request some kind of a cursive font. The font size that I'm going after is going to be fairly big, 16 pixels. An important thing here is the Z index, and I'm going to set that to +1. That's going to make our drop-down menu appear on top of other things. Down in the middle, we're going to have that be a position absolute. All of our three sections are absolute positioned with a top of 91 pixels right underneath the top section. The width of it is going to be 860 pixels because all of our boxes are 860 wide. The height of this one's going to be big. This is our clickable map. It's going to take 500 pixels to hold all that JPEG image. Down in the footer area, we're going to position that one absolute. Not a surprise, that's the way all of them are done. A little bit of math says that the top on this, it has to go underneath the header, it has to go underneath the middle. You add the two together, and that means the top for this one's going to be 591 pixels. The width, as always, is going to be 860 pixels. And the height of this one, it's just a little short thing. We're going to make it 20 pixels high. The font for stuff in the footer area is going to be the same style of font as we used other parts of the web page. It'll be Comic Sans MS, and it'll be cursive. Notice we didn't have to pick a font for the middle area. That's just an image. There isn't any fonts rendered in HTML in the center area. That's going to be 16 pixels high, the little footer. If we look at it in the browser, it looks different, but not good. Now comes the fun part of our CSS work. We're going to start out with a little div for the movie, and we're going to take that and we're going to position it in the upper left corner of our web page. That's pretty simple, but this is the anchor point for our nav menu that'll be positioned right after it. By specifying the position, we're getting out of the static normal flow of web pages and taking control of the thing. Here comes the div for the menu, and this is going to have a bunch of parts of it, and they're going to all work together to give us our final cool looking result. First thing we're going to do is we're going to have the position of the menu as absolute. Then we're going to have the div for the menu list item, and we want that to float to the left. That's going to make our top menu float sideways as opposed to vertically, and that's a big deal. Position is going to be relative, and that's going to make the submenus flow underneath it. The list style is going to be none. We don't want any little bullets or anything on it. And the background color of 999 is going to be kind of a gray thing. Now we're going to work on the menu unordered list item and the anchor tag for it. And the display is going to be a block. That means our menu is going to be made out of a bunch of boxes, which is the kind of thing we want as opposed to just text. The height of the box is going to be 30 pixels. The width of the box, we had to do a little bit of math on it. It's going to be 173 pixels, but after that, there's going to be a border of 1 pixel on each side. That'll give it 175 total pixels in width. If you get 4 of those going across, that'll bring us from our movie all the way across the top of our clickable map and get us to the right side of the screen. The font size for things inside of the drop-down nav menu is going to be 20 pixels, and we want the text to be in the center of the box. Text decoration is going to be none, and that's going to mean that our links aren't going to be underlined. We don't want them underlined. The color is going to be black, and we're pretty much done with that piece, but there's a lot of pieces. The next div is for the menu unordered list, and the position of this thing is going to be absolute, and that makes the submenu flow underneath the top items. And the other thing is the visibility is going to be hidden, and that means our submenu items are normally hidden unless you're pointing at them. And now we're going to get into what happens when we point at it, when we hover over it. A list item, when we're hovering at it, we're going to change the color of it to yellow. So the top item that defines the whole column in our menu is going to change color to yellow when we're pointing at it. When we point at it, we're going to have a div saying the menu list item. When we're pointing at that, it's going to make this submenu appear. And this is going to be invisible most of the time, but when you point to the column heading, underneath it is going to be all the other items in our box. They're not going to be visible until we point at them. We made them hidden up above, but now we're saying when you point at it, make them visible. Now we're going to work on the unordered list item when we're hovering at it, and we're pointing at a item in the submenu, which is where our anchor tags are going to be. That'll click two different web pages. We're going to make the background color kind of a gray, and we're going to make the text color black so it's nice and contrasty. We are done. We have done the work. Now let's go and see the before and after. This is the before in the browser. Now if we refresh the page, ta-da, we've got our nav menu with a drop-down list. When we hover at it, you can see the effects that we set up are happening. And underneath that, we've got our clickable image map. That concludes our website design using raw CSS. We end up with a web page that looks something like this. Pretty nice. The coding to do it is 2 pages, a front and a back. Will take care of the whole thing. What do we've got? We're using HTML for content. We're using CSS for the layout, just to make things look pretty. All the work of the site was done in HTML. It's got some features. It's got a movie, and the movie's an animated GIF, which means it plays without trouble on almost all the browsers. We've got a hover menu, and that uses fancy cascading style sheets. That was most of the work as far as typing goes, was to get that right. We've got a clickable image. That's fancy HTML. Highly compatible stuff. If you've got any comments or questions, contact me at giantdatabase.com. I'm Mike. Thank you very much for watching.